In talking with parents with a dependent adult child, they often say something like, they just aren't motivated. And it makes you wonder two things. How many parents are just thinking this? And if you want to motivate someone, then wouldn't it help to understand motivation first? Of course, when this is said, they usually mean intrinsic motivation. And there is a model for motivation that does just that focuses on that. I'm talking about the flow model. What it does is the simplest way to put it is that all tasks are a challenge and that every challenge needs to be met with certain skill. So when they're saying that, what they're also saying is that flow is what we want them to be in, the flow state. But what we're getting is them to be in apathy and the apathy state. So I'm going to focus on that most. But before I do, let's talk about what flow is a little bit. It's when their maximum challenge level capacity meets their maximum skill level capacity. Think of it like you got two teams playing in the whatever sport you want to pick. It's a championship game. One team is expected to dominate, no problem whatsoever. But in an upset, the underdog team is what wins. Yeah, sure, we'll probably say they were training harder and whatnot. But as a team, they probably collectively entered the flow state way more and easier than the team that was expected to win. Their challenge was not met. They were expected to not be met, while the underdog team challenge level was met. Just in case you're not a sporty, I'll go with a different story then. Uh, David and Goliath. Most people know this one. Goliath was all hooting and hollering. He was ready for a challenge when he came up there and whatnot. And the whole time he was doing all that, David was getting amped up. Talked about, yo, why isn't anybody going out there to fight him? You can already picture that he's getting that state like he's about to go out there. It's no surprise that he's well, I'll leave that one alone for now. So he goes out there and obviously his challenge level he recognizes it. Of course, he knows he also was also not fighting just him, so skill level is heightened also. Goliath, on the other hand, he takes a look at him and is like, uh, "Y'all joking?" He dismissed the challenge and was nowhere near the flow state. Um, I think we know how that plays out. If you don't, just ask in the comments. For sure, somebody will like you. I wouldn't be surprised if he went way far down to the apathy state also because yeah, he just wasn't feeling it then. And that's how things play out. Maybe our children are playing out like that. They're sitting down, stuck in apathy. So now that we know a little bit of what flow is, apathy is pretty much the opposite of that. It's a low skill, low challenge. Um, this is probably where the kid is if we're saying they're just not motivated. Uh, I don't want to. I don't think of it as laziness. It's kind of just not engaging with life. The whole they're alive, but they're not living. That kind of thing. They usually come off with no direction, usually trying to escape or something by escapism or whatnot. Most of the time, they need some more exploration. For this state, avoidance is the default. And it's easy to spot because oftentimes it manifests itself as a lack or suppression of emotion. Yeah, some people just don't have it, and this is a good sign that they're not in the apathy state. They have no ambition, no drive. usually what we're looking for when we say no motivation. And they usually live life. I've come across many that live life with a false sense of entitlement. Came across one guy on a job that was like 34, 35. He goes on saying, "Yeah, I'm a king." And then one day he asked to go to the store so he can go and get some shopping done. I take him and I got some things going, so I go in also, grab some things. I go to self checkout and I see him kind of trying to figure self checkout out. Um, yeah, this was pretty much telling to me. He is not the only one. They tend to expect high reward for little effort, for little or no effort. Sum it up like this: flow state is when maximum challenge and maximum skill are matched. The opposite state is low skill and challenge capacity. Usually see low engagement and responsibility at the same time. Of course, there are some reasons that we see for this that are pretty much common in these cases that we're talking about. One of the reasons is that life is too easy. They have no real meaning in any of their responsibilities, no real or meaningful responsibilities. They just haven't had to. Why? So without the band on them, there's no reason to grow. Necessities are handled. So there's that. And the consequences that would normally come with not having those are also gone. So from that end also. It's pretty dangerous because they settled into comfort rather than growth. Another reason that they end up in the state is because they happen to fall into one of the identity traps. Yeah, these I really can't stand. Some things like social media, um, some groups tend to reinforce the apathy state. The manosphere is one of these. Um, it's pretty it's pretty noticeable when they start saying, nothing is ever your fault. Total blame game. That definitely plays toward the apathy state. They are sitting there normalizing being stuck and discouraging growth and discouraging growth. And why not? These groups provide community and validation. These are two of the things about the apathy state are just craving. If someone can be on the in group and they're blaming others, and blaming others is rewarded, then there's no reason to try. If someone's identity becomes it's someone else's responsibility, then they really don't need to. Other reason that we get this is because learned helplessness. Ugh, I really hate this one. They tried, some of them tried at least, and then quit. Yeah, a lot of people don't start apathetic. They get there because of something. Maybe there were some failed attempts. Maybe they went to school, it didn't work out that well. Maybe college, then dropped out. Maybe dropped out of high school even. Maybe they didn't get that job that they wanted to get, or jobs. Most don't try that hard though. Or maybe there was that boy or girl that didn't give them the time of day. This also makes them go into a comparison culture. Oh, they can do it and I can't, or it was because of this and they got it and I don't. Whatever the case is, they're comparing, and when they start doing that, it's going to lead to their shame and discouragement. Unfortunately, it's a self fulfilling continuating thing. It ends up feeling safer to not try than it is to try and fail again. This is the case with a lot of the successful child singers and athletes. Think of Britney Spears. She's a pretty good example of learned helplessness. It seems like that played out very much in her case. Um, Evident with that conservatorship that she had a few years ago. And I'm happy that it ended for her. That's showing that she's grown. Another person we can imagine is Richard Sandrak. If you're sitting there going, who? Um, Maybe you know his by another name, Little Hercules. Yeah, he was another one that had a very tough childhood, and that was through his parents. Now we know that there's parents out there that are like, we need to try hard, and they really drive it home. And his dad was definitely one of them. There's no question about it. Nobody can question that. But once he got older, he was able to see what was being missed, and he gave it up. When he was younger, his dad he learned not to ask, not to question. Can I stop this workout? He knew there was consequences, and so he didn't even bother asking. Something I want you to know about the apathy, about being in the state of apathy. Ugh, get the words out eventually. Being in apathy doesn't mean broken. It doesn't mean that there's a moral failing. It usually just means that they're stuck in an environment or pattern that is not requiring them to grow. We can change it. We can change an environment. We can change a pattern. We might get some results then. So that we can look at four different other things too, four things to do if they're in apathy. That is. Now remember that I said it's a low skill level, and usually there's some feelings that are going along with that. So if we can start building some skills first, that would help out. They probably have a low challenge capacity also. So don't bombard them with a bunch of skills to build. Just do one at a time. They don't have to challenge. They usually don't have the mental state to handle multiple challenges that are too much. Heck, I've seen some that can't even handle a small and tiny one, like going to a store and getting some eggs is a challenge. When you do start adding challenges like that, then you can when it starts flowing out, right? Then it's time to start adding some meaningful challenges. This is where we start getting to what they want. This helps them see that there is a point, there is a purpose, there is a reason, and they want it, not just somebody else. This is going to help foster their intrinsic goals because we want to build that intrinsic motivation, and it seems to be missing in this state. While we're doing that, we can also minimize the distractions to do it. Unfortunately, apathy is prone to distractions. Not a problem, just minimize them. Right? Easier said than done, I know, but we'll get on to that. That's actually one of the reasons why I'm working on building a community. And if you're interested, then put interested down at the bottom and we can talk about that a little more in the comments, that is. So now when we start building skills, we want to increase their competence by encouraging healthier hobbies and very small tasks. The meaningful challenges that we're going to be adding, use Goldilocks challenges in order to do so. These are things that are not too hard for the challenge level, for the skill level, but not too easy for it either. You know, just right. In this state, it is prone to being overwhelmed easily. So you're going to have to keep an eye on that also. And then when you can start in fostering some intrinsic goals, because flow requires purpose and trust, or it's not going to happen. We'll get more into that at some point in time. This is just an introduction. Instead of focusing on outcomes, when you start putting in intrinsic goals, focus on their interests more than the outcomes. Remember, we're working on the whole personality here. We're not just working on a particular outcome. And the apathy state is hard to get out of alone. And we want to minimize distractions because the apathy state is prone to escapism. You want to be able to step back on what you can. And oftentimes, they will need repetition to develop some of the confidence in themselves. Good news is, apathy is not permanent, but unfortunately, it does not fix itself either. Something has to change. We can change a pattern. We can change the expectation. We can change an environment. Ugh, still can't talk. And doing so, we can help will help us change their direction. There is something to note. I briefly talked about it, but I didn't really mention it. We want to avoid the parent trap. We can go in there increasing the challenge, and most people do try to do this. But when we do that, and then we do not build up the adequate skill level to meet them challenges, this is pushing them into an anxiety state. Um, that's also in the flow model, but like I said, I was sticking with alpha, leaving that here. It comes with a different set of problems. Maybe you've seen those, but like I said, this is apathy.